Gaza-Israel border, Reuters. An Israeli airstrike destroyed a vacant multi-storied building in the Gaza Strip on Saturday, killing 2 teenagers who were passing by, local health officials said, and Palestinian militants fired dozens of rockets into southern Israel. It was one of the most serious flare-ups of fighting since the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, but Israeli Euro trademark's chief military spokesman, Brigadier General Ronan Mainless, said it was premature to say whether it heralded the start of a broader campaign against militants in the enclave, run by the Islamist movement Hamas. 3 people were wounded in Israel when a rocket struck the southern town of Sderot, police said. Tension had been building since Friday, when Israeli troops shot dead a Palestinian teenager during protests on the Gaza border on Friday, where weekly Palestinian protests, including attempts to breach Israeli Euro trademark's border fence, have drawn live fire, and an Israeli soldier was wounded. A second Palestinian protester died of his wounds on Saturday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, we will expand the scope of our reaction to Hamas Euro trademark terror attacks as much as needed. If Hamas doesn't Euro trademark get our message today, it will tomorrow Euro. Sporadic Palestinian rocket attacks and incendiary kites from Gaza that have burned large tracts of farmland in Israeli border areas have increased public pressure on Netanyahu for a stronger armed response. The Israeli military said it had struck more than 40 targets within several militant compounds belonging to Hamas, in what it described as one of its widest operations since the 2014 conflict. Plumes of smoke. The blasts shook homes and shattered windows, and black plumes of smoke rose from the sites of the explosions. The Israeli military said one airstrike had hit a high-rise building in Al-Shadi refugee camp in the northern Gaza Strip, describing the target as a Hamas urban warfare training facility with a tunnel underneath. Health officials in Gaza said the building was empty, but 2 Palestinians aged 15 and 16, among a crowd in a nearby public park, were killed. Around 10 other passers-by were wounded, the officials said. Nearby houses were damaged. During the Euro trademark's fighting, Gaza militants fired more than 90 mortar bombs and rockets toward Israel, the military said, setting off sirens and sending Israelis fleeing to shelters. Some were intercepted by Israeli Euro trademark's Iron Dome missiles. Rocket warning sirens went off in the coastal city of Ashkelon, about 12 kilometers, 7 miles, from the enclave, further north than in recent rocket attacks. A police spokesman said no hits had been identified in the city. A Palestinian official who spoke to Reuters on condition of anonymity said Egypt and other international players were holding contacts with Israel and Gaza to restore calm. There was no immediate comment from officials in Cairo. Weekly protests. The fighting began on Friday, when thousands of Palestinians gathered at the Israel-Gaza border area for weekly protests that have now entered their 4th month. The Israeli military said Friday Euro trademark's protesters were throwing burning tires, stones, explosive devices, and fire bombs at its soldiers, and that one of its officers was wounded by a Palestinian grenade hurled across the border fence. Hours later, the military launched a series of airstrikes in Gaza. Israel says Hamas has been orchestrating the weekly protests to distract from governance problems and provide cover for militants' Euro trademark cross-border attacks. Hamas denies this. Its spokesman Fawzi Barhoum blamed Israel on Saturday for the escalation. More than 130 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in the protests. There have been no Israeli fatalities during the so-called a Great March of Return Euro demonstrations. Gaza is home to 2 million Palestinians. Poverty has become widespread and vital infrastructure has collapsed under a 12-year blockade by Israel, which says its aim is to curb security threats by Hamas. Egypt also keeps tight restrictions on its border crossing with Gaza. Organizers say the demonstrations aim to press demands for a right to lands lost to Israel in the 1948 war of its foundation, and for the blockade to ease.